We good? All right, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody had a great Wednesday. Hope everybody had a good day, because we'll see how tonight goes. And you know, this night we're studying chapters 17 through 24 of Proverbs. That's 8 chapters of Proverbs. That's a lot, and there's a lot of things to discuss in here. I appreciate great discussion. I appreciate great input. Christians in the back with the mic, raise your hand if you ever want to say anything, and we'll go ahead and include that into our conversation tonight. So certainly, yeah, appreciate good discussion. My wife will tell you I love discussions. But technically, I'm an engineer, and I want to get right to the bottom of the situation most of the time. So I kind of just look for quick resolutions. So if you look at this, I mean, we've got 8 chapters to do. That's 220 verses in this chapter and all these chapters. We got about 40 minutes, a little less than that now. It's ticking down. That's 5.5 minutes per verse. So we're getting down to the crunch time here. And then we got 10.91 seconds per verse. Yeah, 5.5 verses per minute. 10.91 seconds per verse. So if we can keep all activities to 10 seconds or less on each verse, we'll be fine. Now, I measured all this out. All right, so we'll kind of buckle up and talk through some of the things that Proverbs has. I've read through this several times. It's kind of like a squirrel. You know, a squirrel's going here. He talks about something. Oh, he'll go over here. He'll do something over here. And then all of a sudden, oh, let's go back to what we were doing the first time. So Proverbs is a little bit like that. It's a lot of different thoughts, but some of these thoughts end up meshing back together at some point, and we'll kind of make this work. That's kind of how I've worked through this section of Proverbs here. Oh man, we're not going to be able to read that hardly. But hopefully you can. I should have made bigger font. So chapter 17 through 24, I kind of broke it down into 7 different areas here. One being rich and poor. One being home and family. One being work or being lazy. One about alcohol and drunkenness. One about being friendly or being unfriendly. One section about heart and the spirit. And one section about body and the soul. So we'll talk about all these things and really some of the wisdom that he had for us, or that is given to us in Proverbs. But first, and I'm going to be using the New Living Translation, not because I would choose to use this all the time, but for the reading of this, it just seemed to read a little bit easier. But it still kept the same concept because I matched it over. It kept the same concept or thought that was going there. So I want to start out with Proverbs chapter 22, kind of skipping ahead. Chapter 22, verses 17 through 21, where it says, "Listen to the words of the wise, apply your heart to my instruction, for it is good to keep these sayings in your heart and always ready on your lips. I'm teaching you today, yes, you, so you will trust in the Lord." I've written 30 sayings, it says here, but there's another version that says excellent sayings for you. "Filled with advice and knowledge, in this way you may know the truth and take an accurate report of those who sent you." So I jumped ahead. This is like a different section of Proverbs. I looked at some of the past references on this. This may have been written not by Solomon himself, but maybe by some of his wise men. They have a section in here that may have been referencing some of their input into his wise sayings. So this is kind of a lead into everything with Proverbs. There's so many wise sayings in here and so many things to apply to your heart, and there's things that we can learn from this every day. So we'll look at this together section by section. Apologize for the size. It looked bigger on my computer at home. But if you squint really good, you can see it. So we'll start out with the rich and the poor. And we'll go through a few verses here on the rich and the poor. First one here is chapter 22 and verse 2. The rich and poor have this in common: the Lord has made them both. So no matter what classification we all are on the earth, we're part of God's creation. And we all understand that when we go and we talk to people and we try to bring them to Christ or try to talk to them about God and everything like that. We have to keep in mind, no matter what classification of people there are, whether you're fitting in any of these classifications, the Lord made you all. He made us all, and He loves us all. So that's the first one. The second one is chapter 22, verse 4. So skip down a little bit. True humility and fear of the Lord led to riches, honor, and long life. So not only did the Lord make us, but fearing the Lord is really what leads you to that true value in life. Riches, honor, long life. And I don't think it's talking about monetary wealth there. I think it's talking about riches in God. The next one, 19 verse 4. So we'll skip back. As we go through this, I've kind of laid these out in a certain way. You see that red line there? It's going to be a divider here. We're talking more about the rich and the wealthy right now, those that have more than others. So chapter 19, verse 4 says, wealth makes many friends, poverty drives them all away. Now, what do you think that means? Wealth makes many friends, but poverty just drives them all away. Do you think, anybody want to? People are attracted to money.
We're not talking about real friends, right?
That's right.
Prodigal son.
Exactly. Prodigal son is a good example, a great example of that. And in this version here, it has friends in quote. So people are attracted to, for some reason, to people that have money because it's just, I guess you're more affluent or you feel better about yourself maybe if you're around those people. But you've got this other group where if you're not as wealthy or you're not as seen as a socialite or an elite, they're not as friendly, right? They're not as eager. People are not as eager to associate with those, I guess is a way to put it. And I think that's what he's saying here. It's a little bit, but that's not a positive thing, I don't believe. He's not saying it's a positive thing. He's saying it more like, wealthy, you're going to have friends, but they may not really be friends. And we'll talk about that more. Yes, Merrill.
Wealth has influence too, and you have the right connections, and you can get here. You can get the right help. But there's another proverb that says, "Don't make me rich where I forget about the Lord.
Right.
Don't make me poor where I end up having to steal. So make me somewhere in the middle," is what that particular proverb says.
Yeah, good point. And I think that way you're able to relate better if that's the case to those groups. Tim?
Come down just to verse 6 in that chapter. Many are treated with favor for nobility, and every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. I think it's one of the reasons people are drawn to rich people.
Yep. Yep. Very good point. So for those online, Tim is saying that in verse 6 there, rich people generally are more, they're attracted, more people are attracted to them potentially because they might have an opportunity to get a gift. Is that right? Yeah. So another way of looking at it. Now again, he's not condoning everybody needs to be rich or everybody needs to follow the rich. He's just saying these are just things that I've observed that are not truly beneficial. Verses 22, chapter 22 and verse 9. Blessed are those who are generous because they feed the poor. So it is beneficial if you are feeding the poor or you're helping others. Being wealthy has its abilities and capabilities. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. It's just that you need to use it in the right way. Bobby?
I was just going to say on the blessed are the generous, that's not necessarily tied to wealth. Because I know some poor people that have taken care of other poor people that are very generous in what they don't have very much, but they give of what they have, and they give it with love, and they're very endeared and loved by those they help.
Yep.
They're also in a position probably to better see those needs. Whereas if you're rich, you may be removed from that unless you specifically put yourself in the position to be more aware of where those needs are.
Yep. Good point. So there's opportunities on both sides. We'll go ahead and talk about some of the verses they have here for being poor or acknowledging the poor. Chapter 21 and verse 13. Those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. We'll skip ahead. Chapter 19 and verse 1. Better to be poor and honest than to be dishonest and a fool. Chapter 19 and verse 22, if you skip down a little further. Loyalty makes a person attractive. It's better to be poor than dishonest. Again, keeping that same mindset. That probably is saying that, you know, if you have to be dishonest to be wealthy or get gain or whatever, it's better to be just poor than to live the lifestyle of being dishonest. Chapter 22 and verse 1. Choose a good reputation over great riches. Being held in high esteem is better than silver or gold. So, again, same mindset. It's better to have a good lifestyle and a good mindset than it is to be wealthy. And then one last one here is 20 verse 15. Wise words are more valuable than much gold and many rubies. So it's important to, if you are wealthy, to treat it in the appropriate way. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy, but use it for God, use it to be generous, use it to help the poor. And if you're poor, there's ways still to serve God. Don't look for ways to be dishonest just to not be poor. Still continue to serve God. And I thought, you know, one reference here that I had, can somebody look up Revelations 3, verses 17 and 18, because the Laodiceans, the letter to the Laodiceans really hits directly on some of that they were doing, being wealthy and being poor. Can somebody raise their, Chad's got it?
Revelations 3:17
and 18, yeah.
You say, I am rich, I have everything I want, I don't need a thing, and you don't realize that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. So I advise you to buy gold from me, gold that has been purified by fire. Then you will be rich. Also buy white garments from me, so that you will not be ashamed by your nakedness, and ointment for your eyes, so you'll be able to see.
Directing it all back to you can think you're wealthy on earth, but the true wealth is in God. All right, the second one here is home and family. So we'll talk a little bit about home and family, and I'll go ahead and put a quantifier out there before we start. This is written from, I think, a man's perspective for the most part. So if you've read these scriptures and you read this section, you know there's a couple of verses that talks about the wife. And I'm just going to say that as we roll into this, really everybody knows that if mama isn't happy, then the whole house isn't happy. That saying is true, and I think that really points to this. It's not just...
Are you saying from this discussion we might have to all sit on the corner of the house?
I don't think so. I think it's going to keep us from getting there. All right, so we'll go ahead. 17:1. Better a dry crust eaten in peace than a house filled with feasting and conflict. I think we all can understand that. Nobody wants to eat in a house where everybody's mad at each other because you're not talking to each other. You're going to be upset with each other, and it's just not going to be a good meal. And I'm sure there's been some holiday functions in some people's houses that They've experienced that, not in here, of course, but, out there in the world. Chapter 19, is that 19 and verse 13? I could pull it up on here, but 19 and verse 13.
You might be able to see it better back there because of that line.
Yeah. Am I? Okay. A foolish child is a calamity to a father. A quarrelsome wife is as annoying as a constant dripping. Again, children can impact the families, and it's important to have stability at home. And no matter if it's the wife or the husband or whatever, they all are working together for the same goal. And I know this is written from a man's perspective, but a man can drive a wife to be this way if he's not doing what he needs to be doing.
And I want to be cautious in even making comment, but if you look at the way that this is compared, when there is problem with the children, then that can lead to the quarreling between husband and wife if that balance
Yep.
isn't there.
Saying if that balance isn't there, if you look at verse 13, a foolish son is a ruin to his father, and a wife's quarreling is a continual dripping. That's got to be related to the ruin of the father through trying to reprimand a son, maybe a little too late.
Yep.
And then that causes father
You
and
need
mother,
to take care of our
husband,
children.
wife,
Yeah.
not being on the same page,
Right.
and that just only leads to quarreling.
Right. And then that leads to the breakdown of family conditions quite often. All right, so we'll go through these next two pretty quickly. 21 verse 9. Um, 21 verse 9, it's better to live alone in the corner of an attic than with a quarrelsome wife in a lovely home. 21 verse 19, so a little further down. I don't know why Solomon's jumping all into this, but it's better to live alone in the desert than with a quarrelsome, complaining wife. Again, Jeffrey, who is unmarried, is going to speak.
Oh yeah, here it goes. Yeah. No consequences. No, no. I was just going to mention that if you think about Solomon, he had about 1,000 women around him constantly. Yeah. It's like, dude, you kind of did that to yourself. So, if you can't find he's trying to find a little corner of his house where you can have some peace and quiet, but you're the one who filled it up with a bunch of women. So kind of on you. Sorry.
Great point, and we'll move on. So, all right. Let's talk more about the children's relationship with the father, and we're going to have to probably start moving a little quicker. 7:07. So, chapter 20 and verse 20. Chapter 20, verse 20. If you insult your father or mother, your light will be snuffed out in total darkness. That's a big statement. Chapter 19 and verse 26. Children who mistreat their father or chase away their mother are an embarrassment and a public disgrace. That's what my version says. So we see that in the world. In the world. Yep. In Walmart. Somebody said Walmart. 22:15. And it's sad to see those kind of conditions. 22 verse 15 says, a youngster's heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away. So we're starting to roll into, if you want to prevent children from potentially being that way with their parents, then discipline and control of those mindsets will lead them to a brighter future. We'll do 19 verse 18. Discipline your children while there is hope, otherwise you will ruin their lives. That's a huge statement for parents. You've got a huge responsibility right there, and you don't want your children's lives ruined, so you got to take responsibility on making sure that they're doing the right things and giving them a control, a boundary, and understanding that. It's hard for, Hannah, it's hard to make her have a boundary. I mean, she's out there all over the place, but it's important to do. Emily knows that. 23 verse 13. 23:13. It says, "Do not fail to discipline your children. The rod of punishment won't kill them." I think there's probably a different type, a different version there for that, but I think we've all heard that one. And then the last one is 22:6. 22 and 6 for this section. Direct your children into the right path, and when they are older, they will not lead from it. That's kind of the final statement here. Discipline, monitoring your children, making sure that they are doing the right things and they have the right understanding of what boundaries should be there for a family relationship. Train them right, and the blessing would be that they wouldn't leave from that path as they grow older.
I think also it's important, we as parents can put a lot of pressure on ourselves that this has to be done. You know, if we don't do it right this day, then we fail, but we forget sometimes that this is a process. This discipline doesn't, I mean, it happens continually. I mean, if you don't get it right the first time, you have a chance to correct that in the future. So, I mean, it's just an ongoing process, I think.
Yeah.
It's important to remember as parents.
That's right. And nobody ever gets it right the first time. All right, let's talk about some other happy things. Who's got grandkids in here? Yeah, you happy about those? Solomon agrees with you. Chapter 17 and verse 6. 17 verse 6. Grandchildren are the crowning joy of the aged. Parents are the pride of their children. So, grandparents, I haven't seen a grandparent that doesn't just gleam whenever they talk about their grandkids. It's just something special about that. And then, children are very proud of their parents most of the time when they're talking about them. You can just tell that there's a grandchild right there. So you got them on your phones, you got them all around your house. The pictures are everywhere. Never shy away from showing pictures. 23, chapter 23, 22 through 25. Listen to your father who gave you life, and don't despise your mother when she is old. Get the truth and never sell it. Also get wisdom, discipline, and good judgment. The father of godly children has cause for joy. What a pleasure to have children who are wise. So give your father and mother joy, that she who gave you birth may be happy. Wow, you just think about that statement right there. That's touching, being a parent, and all the impact that you have on your family and your kids and how important it is. Just kind of brings it all together.
That verse really jumped out. I was catching up from reading this week this morning, and I was actually skimming through some of this, and that really jumped out. I mean, just like what you said, I don't have much else to say, but I mean, I don't need the mic. I was just saying that verse and that group of words really stuck out this morning when I was reading it. Just, I know it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
What a pleasure to have children in your lives, and how much responsibility you have as a parent, and even as how you talk to your wife, or how you educate, train them up, and how you treat your own parents. Kind of goes all the way up and down the line.
And the blessing continues as you see everybody grow and you get grandkids, and all this kind of just flows together if everything works well.
I was going to say this to the younger parents. When you're
Feeling not lost, but just worn out or tired or whatever, feel free to ask some of us older ones. We've made plenty of mistakes that we'd love to share with you and go, oh yeah, I did this and it worked, or I did this and it didn't work. As much as when it talks about learning from the elders, the men learn from the men, the women learn from the women, it's not necessarily the teens learning from the adults. It's also the young adults learning from the other generations and on up the line. I know I always had a good relationship with my dad, and when he was gone, it's like you miss that conversation, but we have that here in our body within the church.
Yep. Thanks, Bob. All right, so I won't go to the New Testament or the other verses that I got for reference here, but can anybody think of any that would fit this? I know those are up there, but anybody remember what those say? Matthew 12:25. Can somebody look up Matthew 12:25 maybe and just read that one? I know Ephesians 6:1-4 is really the children obey your parents in the Lord. Honor your father and mother. Matthew, yep.
Knowing their thoughts, he said to them, every kingdom, Matthew 12:25.
Is that what it says? Do I have the wrong one?
Every kingdom divided against itself is laid to waste, and no city of house divided against itself will stand.
Okay,
So it'll be a house
that's
divided.
it. The house divided against itself will stand. So, keeping a house together. All this flows into keeping a house together, keeping a family together, keeping it tight. If you divide and have issues, then your house and family are going to suffer from that. And so, all right, so we'll move on to the next one. These are a little more harder to see, obviously. Work and laziness. So anybody like to work in here? No. But does anybody need to be lazy? No, you definitely don't. And this is really the guidance to that. Chapter 18 and verse 9, we'll look at some of these real quick. Kind of move a little bit faster here. 18 and verse 9, a lazy person is as bad as someone who destroys things. Being lazy doesn't add anything, it just takes away. Chapter 19 and verse 15. Lazy people sleep soundly, but idleness leaves them hungry. 20 and verse 4. Those too lazy to plow in the right season will have no food in the harvest. So we're starting to cycle through this. If you won't work, you won't eat. You won't have the ability to have food and provide for yourself or anyone else. The look of laziness, chapter 24, verses 30 through 34. 24, 30 through 34. I walked by the field of a lazy person, the vineyard of one with no common sense. I saw that it was overgrown with nettles, it was covered with weeds, and its walls were broken down. Then, as I looked and I thought about it, I learned this lesson. A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. Not taking care of things like you should, just being haphazard, I think. And before you know it, you've just let things go and there's no way to catch back up. I believe that's what that one is really trying to say. And I like a little extra sleep and I love some extra slumber, but I do realize that you've got to get up and do some things to keep things going.
I think it's interesting. Solomon said, I saw and considered it, and I looked and received instruction. So
A lazy person is not helping themselves. They're only helping somebody else by looking at their example and saying, that's why I need to work.
Yep, good point. And then can you look up, Richard, real quick, 2 Thessalonians 16, verse 10. 3, 6 through 10, I'm sorry. 3, 6 through 10.
I didn't have chapter 16.
Verse 16.
I got to thinking there was a little
2 Thessalonians 3:16. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times in every way. The Lord be with you all.
No. 3, 6 through 10.
Oh, 3.
Chapter 3, verse 6.
Oh, I thought you said 16. Sorry. 6 through 10.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3, verse 6.
Verse
All right. Comedy of errors. Verse 6. Now we command you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you keep away from any brother who is walking in idleness and not in accord with the tradition that you received from us. For you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us, because we were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it. But with toil and labor we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you. It was not because we do not have the right, but to give you in ourselves an example to imitate. For even when we were with you, we would give you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat.
So sounded like they had a little bit of trouble with idleness there. And the apostles were trying to demonstrate, or Paul was trying to demonstrate, even though he probably didn't have to, he shouldn't have had to, they should have supported him, he still worked and demonstrated that. So it's a lesson to us about idleness, or being lazy, and being a role model to those in that we should work and try to do better and pay for what we eat, or whatever you want to call that. Alcohol and drunkenness, there's 3 verses or 3 sections that we talk about here. Chapter 20 and verse 1. We've seen these verses many, many times when it comes to the conversation about the concerns around drinking. Wine produces mockers. Alcohol leads to brawls. Those who led astray by drink cannot be wise. Chapter 23, verse 19 talks about not mixing, not carousing. 23:19 says, wrong chapter here. My child, listen to me wise, keep your heart. That's not the right one. Yeah, keep your heart on the right course. Do not carouse with the drunkards or feast with gluttons, for they are on their way to poverty, and too much sleep clothes them in rags. And this one just made me think of Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18, where it says, evil communications corrupts good morals. I think that was this one. It may be the next one, though. Wait a minute. 5:18. What is 5:18? I may have that wrong. That's it. Yeah, be filled with the Spirit. Do not be drunk with wine. Yep. I use that other verse later. So alcohol and drunkenness, I think we all understand the impact that it can have around for you and for the people around you, and for trying to associate with those that do those kind of things. Being friendly or being unfriendly. It talks a little bit about friendship, but then it talks a lot more about what is unfriendly, what is not friendly. Chapter 18 and verse 14 talks about real friends. What is a real friend?
Someone who's willing to tell you what you don't want to hear.
That's not the right verse either. 24. I cannot read this thing. 18 verse 24. There are friends, quote, quote, who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. Rich and poor. The friends there in quotes, because they're not your real friends if they're looking out to destroy you or take you down or demean you. Those are not the kind of friends that are key friends. And you see a lot of this happen in school. Kids come home, they talk about some of the things that their friends said about them or did to them in school a lot of times. And that's a time for a lesson on what a real friend is. Richard?
I think what this is too, you don't pick your family.
But, and sometimes with that, there can come rivalry, things like that, sibling rivalry. But when it comes to this is someone you've selected. A friend sticks closer than a brother, meaning someone who's willing to just have your back and tell you what you don't always want to hear. Maybe give you the insight to your blind spot.
Yep.
That,
very good.
yeah.
And we'll skip back up. So verse 19, same chapter, Proverbs 18. An offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. I think we've all probably experienced a argument with our friends in the past. You get somebody that maybe you thought was your friend, and you end up in an argument, and you can't pull it back together. Too many times that just happens, and so it's harder to bring that back together. And so it's important when you have friends to try to keep it that way. We'll skip to, let's look at chapter 18 and verse 13. 18 and verse 13. I thought Emily might want me to read this one. Spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. Oh, yeah. She's agreeing to that one way too much. It's hard, though. I mean, you think about it. You kind of envision a lot of times how you want things to end up, and then you start talking about it should be like this and like this. And if you don't have all the facts, you easily could end up just totally wrong and off base. And it makes you look a little foolish in the end. And a little bit of wisdom there. Try to get all the facts before you speak. Let's go to 22, verse 24 and 25. And that'll end this section. And I think this is where my other verse is coming in, 1 Corinthians 15. Don't befriend angry people or associate with hot-tempered people, or you will learn to be like them and endanger your soul. Don't agree to guarantee. Oh, nope, that was 24 and 25 right there. So, don't befriending. Don't hang around the wrong people. Because it's too easy for it to rub off. And that's 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 33. Yeah. Bad company corrupts good morals.
Yeah, that translation, I like the translation it's reading. It says, don't befriend angry people or associate with hot-tempered people. It's easier if that person's angry and complaining to complain. It's probably to be positive enough for them complaining and angry and hot-tempered people. And I think that's the point.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't notice when you're in the middle of complaining, like at work, you're complaining with someone or surrounding yourself with people that are not uplifting to yourself.
It's too easy to fall. You're not going to. Most of the time, you're not going to pull somebody this type of personality to your level. They're going to pull you to theirs. So.
I find this interesting because this can relate back to the family dynamic, because what happens when this is your family dynamic and you can't get away from that kind of thing? So say
Stress happens, and then, there are times where I've literally heard yelling, and I've yelled saying, don't yell.
Yeah.
And whoa.
Yep.
Where did they learn that?
Yep.
I got to look in a mirror, and so this all ties in, as verse 6, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he will not depart of it. Sometimes the training is even in that, and it's not in the way he should go. They learn from us.
All right, so we got 2.5 minutes left. I've got 2 more sections to go, and I'm going to be the first one to finish my whole lesson. Here we go. All right, chapter 17, verse 22. We start talking about the heart and the spirit. Chapter 17, 22. And my thing is... I'm having technical issues. 22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. You feel that sometimes? You feel a broken spirit sometimes? And how it just totally just rips you apart. And it takes away everything else that we've talked about, our homes, everything else, our family relationships and our friends' relationships and everything else. And we as a church family are here to help each other through these times of broken spirit, to strengthen each other up. That's what's critical to being a part of the Lord's church, because the next verse I have up there is talking about a crushed spirit and how a crushed spirit can totally, that's 18:24, 18:14. The human spirit can endure a sick body, but who in the world can bear a crushed spirit? I added a little ad lib there, but who in the world can just bear a crushed spirit? You can handle things that happen to your body, but the spirit's going to totally wipe you out. So making it through that. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the Lord tests the heart. So that has plenty of references in the New Testament, but we'll go to 21 and verse 2. Yeah, 21 and verse 2. People may be right in their own eyes, but the Lord examines the heart. so many times, you see occasions where people just want to turn their back to the Lord and do what they want to do. The Lord knows how people think on the inside, and He's going to know what's a true follower and who's not. You've got some other verses here about don't envy, and don't envy the wicked, don't envy sinners. Foolishness will ruin your life. These are the things that we've learned about our whole lives, but envy will destroy a life and cause you much pain and agony, because envy, all it does is take away from you. It doesn't take away from the person that you're trying to envy. The last section I want to talk about just left. Body and soul. All right, I'm past time. Let's see. All right, the ears and the eyes are gifts. So let's talk about the tongue. The tongue, it talks about that in 18 and verse 21. Just a couple more minutes. I just want to finish. 18 verse 21. The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. And I think this is love to talk in a bad way. They really don't. They just want to babble and put themselves in a high pedestal, and it's just really not their thing to do. But the tongue, we all understand the New Testament reference to the tongue. It's hard to control. It's like a fire. But I want to finish up with these last two verses here. Chapter 21 and verse 3. We talk about doing right. The Lord is more pleased when we do what is right and just than when we even offer Him sacrifices. So doing right, if you're doing right, you're going to please the Lord more so than maybe some of the things that you do in the mechanical sense, I guess. And then the last one, 19 and verse 16. Chapter 19, verse 16. Keep the commandments and keep your life. Despising them leads to death. So just a final comment about all of these are very wise sayings, but ultimately these are all leading to things that for betterment of our lives, for betterment of our families, for betterment of our roles in the Lord's church, leading into the New Testament obedience, things that we need to do to follow God and do the right thing. All of this just rolls right into that. And building off of these wise sayings can help us in our everyday lives. Thanks for your comments tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'll lead us in a prayer and we'll be dismissed. Father in heaven, we're thankful for all that you do for us. We're thankful for the guidance that we have from the word that we are given. We're thankful for all of our members here, and we're asking your blessings upon us as we live our everyday lives, and help us be strong in you, strong in the word, and strong in serving others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.